Good afternoon, everybody. This is About the Labor Live Fan Line Friday. I am your host, Joe Johnson, owner of PurplePTSD.com, VikingsTerritory.com, and the co-host of Morning Joe's, which is a live podcast every Tuesday morning at 9:30 that you can find basically everywhere. Spotify, iHeartRadio, so on and so forth. Just Google Morning Joe's if you can't find that. That way, do Morning Joe's, Purple PTSD, or Vikings, or something like that, because a lot of the time that show, people end up finding the MSNBC show Morning Joe, which, yeah, cool on that. It's Friday. The game is tomorrow, so we're kind of ahead of schedule. We usually do Fan Line Saturdays, but it's actually, from an alliteration standpoint, sounds better this way. So it's Fan Line Friday. That means if you're new to the show, you can type questions or comments regardless of what platform you're watching this on: YouTube, Facebook, Twitter, Periscope. And I'll read them on the air and answer them, so on and so forth. It looks like the notification came out on time. That's great, Tang. I got a comment from our biggest fan, a guy named Tang. We're actually going to be doing something different starting next week. I'm going to have different signs that I'll hold up. Topic 1, Topic 2, Topic 3, and then people can skip ahead in the video if they're not interested in what I'm talking about. I also wanted to do something, a sign for roll call. So for every show, I'll essentially just call out roll call, and then everybody that wants to participate in the show, if you could just type in the chat section of, again, whatever platform you're watching this on, that you're here, present, aquí, if you're a Spanish language person like I was for, my entire life through college, and I'm terrible at it. So glad to be paying off those student loans still. And we can just, see who's here, who's watching, so on and so forth. This is really a community-based show. I wanted to differentiate this show from other shows by, going live every single day, kind of getting through the news of the day, and then really doing a lot of audience participation. And so if anyone's out there, I am doing the first ever roll call. This may backfire tremendously. Tang is here, but if you want to just say really quickly that you're here, that'd be cool. Again, ask any questions that you might have. There's not a lot of news that's different from today than yesterday. The final injury report came out yesterday. Thielen apparently had a really bad gash on his ankle that required stitches. That should be something, I think, that as gruesome as it may have been, is better than I think a lot of people initially thought. There was a concern when you hear ankle, you think, oh no, especially for a guy that in Adam Thielen is so dependent on his cuts and running routes his way. I mean, we are a little spoiled here in Minnesota, despite the fact that we don't have any Super Bowls to speak of, because it seems like we have every couple of years a once-in-a-generation talent. Chris Carter, Randy Moss. That's it. So I guess I'm wrong. Adrian Peterson. Diggs and Thielen being probably the best two route runners in the NFL, both on the same team. And so while it may be painful, so on and so forth, a cut is better than any sort of sprain, or, you know what I mean? So I guess that was a benefit. Tank says, if Thielen can't play like 90% of the snaps, somebody else has to step up. Who will it be, Treadwell or BC, excluding tight ends? That's a really good question. I don't think that's going to happen. But I would say that it would be BC, because he's higher on the depth chart. He also can run all of the routes that Thielen does. He's bigger. Well, he's not bigger than Treadwell, but he's more fluid and plays the game more similar to what Thielen does than what Treadwell does. I think that perhaps we're making a mountain out of a molehill in regards to the drop that he had last week. That was one drop. Outside of that, he's been really consistent and really good. Treadwell has kind of, at least in the last couple of times that we've seen the ball actually thrown his way, gotten rid of some of those demons of him dropping the ball because he was taking his eyes off of it to look at, what am I going to do? Am I going to get hit? Am I going to do this? Am I going to do that? He just wasn't focused on catching the ball and then doing that afterwards. But I still don't trust Treadwell in a big spot as much as I would trust BC. I do think, and I've said this all week, that we're going to need to see more from those guys, Irv Smith Jr. included. The 49ers do have a really good defense. Their front seven is better than their secondary, but they still have a good secondary. Richard Sherman might not be the same guy that he was, but he's still really good. And so I've been thinking all week that they should go to the tight ends more, and so I know you said not including tight ends, but Rudolph in his career catches almost 85% of the balls thrown his way. That's tremendous. This Vikings offense, position by position, is so much more athletic and talented than the 49ers one is. I am writing an article right now about Greg Rosenthal, the editor of Around the NFL on NFL.com, picked the Vikings to beat the 49ers, and I am kind of analyzing what he said. And I'll spoil some of it here. Tang says, give Aaron Rodgers, Diggs, and Thielen, and the Packers would be winning the Super Bowl every year. I completely agree with you. Devontae Adams is good. Would I rather have him than Diggs or Thielen? No. I think they have outside of Diggs' little diva moments, which I'll talk about in a second. They have a really good symbiotic relationship, a good working relationship. I wouldn't trade that for the world. I guess I'll talk about the Diggs thing really quickly because I know one of the writers for VikingsTerritory.com, Nick Olson, blew up. He blows up all the time. The dude's awesome at what he does. But he got the video of the little conversation that Diggs and Cousins had and basically worked out what Diggs was mouthing. He read his lips, and it was essentially, you don't need to force shit to me, just do you. And essentially, and I love Nick, so I would never want to get in a football argument with him, but he basically said, like, what a diva, sarcastically, as in, Diggs was not necessarily saying just give me the ball. He was actually saying the opposite of it. But if that was what Diggs was thinking, why would he throw his helmet? You know what I mean? I think that he threw his helmet because he was overwhelmed and frustrated, and then he kind of dialed it back and said, well, that's not a good look. And I give him credit for that. I know that I can't imagine the amount of stress and emotion that goes into playing football at that level. It's tremendous. And when, you think that, well, I'm getting open and we could be winning by more, and this is the Saints, we need to build up a good lead. I get that, but I don't think that clip negated the helmet throwing. I think he said that because he threw his helmet, and I think that had he not thrown his helmet, you wouldn't have needed to have said that. So I just don't, I do give him credit again, and I hope that'll extend to this weekend and moving forward. But we've seen this from him before, and it's something that, again, he needs to get a handle on because it's not what good teammates do. Stuff like that, Moss never did that, and it seems like, I know people are somewhat taken aback by it online, but it seems like, I remember the people that turned on Moss, and he's a cancer in the locker room, and he's selfish, and blah, blah, blah. Something I'm really excited to talk about with Coach Mike Tice on Morning Joe's and on this show next week, because I've never heard that Moss was a bad teammate, that he was a cancer in the locker room. Matt Burke didn't like him very much, but outside of that, yeah. Anyway, back to what Rosenthal said. I'll read some of the things that he said about our squad. Initially, so he starts out and he says, the 49ers have done everything right to get to this point with home field advantage over a thinner than usual NFC field. What? What's usual? I don't understand that at all. I thought this was a really competitive NFC field this season. The fact that it came down to the last Sunday, we didn't know who was going to be seated where. There was a lot of movement, a lot of potential. so on and so forth. So that seemed odd. If you average out the records of the NFC teams, it's better than it was last year, and it's better than the AFC. So I don't understand that. I don't want to harp on it too much. I did a little bit in the article because I kind of thought it was funny, but essentially he talks about, the 49ers overcoming an avalanche of injuries. They're healthier than ever. Dee Ford, Quan Alexander, George Kittle's healthy. They got their tackles back. They only lost 3 games this year, and they were all in the final seconds of the game. Garoppolo has passed the test of running Kyle Shanahan's offense, especially on third down. The 5-receiver rotation has turned into a 3-receiver situation with some really a lot better receiving core than it was earlier in the season with the addition of Emmanuel Sanders. Deebo Samuel has emerged as a go-to down the field and a deep ball guy. He's a big playmaker. Kendrick Bourne is a solid slot guy. He essentially finishes his complimenting of the 49ers by saying, General Manager John Lynch and Shanahan did almost everything right the last 3 years to build the franchise to this very moment. Yet, I suddenly believe they are going to lose this week because football. I joke in the article that that's the end of it, and then he picks the score. Wouldn't that be funny if you could just do that? Kirk Cousins is going to win the MVP the next 5 seasons. Click on this article to read why. Because football. I get what he means, though. I'm sure you guys do, too. He starts talking about the Vikings by saying they're not your average number 6 seed. No, yeah, they're not. So why is the NFC so thin if this team is so good at number and they're the 6th seed? I don't know. I don't know why that bothered me so much. He talks about on pure talent, they are the second best NFC team left behind the 49ers. I don't agree with that. You're telling me Emmanuel Sanders, Deebo Samuel, and Kendrick Bourne are better than Diggs, Thielen? I mean, Kittle is better than Rudolph, but in the red zone, Rudolph is near Kittle. The reason they again, 85% of the balls you throw his way, he catches. He will catch touchdowns if you want him to. If you focus on that. The Vikings just have so many weapons that they don't rely on somebody like Kittle. I honestly think position by position, you have people saying Dalvin Cook is the best running back in the entire NFL. No one's saying that about Matt Breida or Raheem. The best 1-2 punch at receiver. A really, really, really reliable tight end who led the NFL in touchdown receptions for tight ends, 2 years ago? On the defensive side of the ball, playmakers everywhere. They are stacked on defense. They had the number 1 and the number 2 defensive ends in terms of pressure late into this season. Linval Joseph, Anthony Barr, Eric Kendricks, Xavier Rhodes, if you time travel to 2017, Harrison Smith, Anthony Harris is tied for the league lead in interceptions. Trey Waynes is no slouch. I don't get it. The offensive line, maybe not, but Brian O'Neill is one of the emerging best right tackles. You got Garrett Bradbury at center. Josh Klein, super underrated. I don't know. I don't think anyone position by position is as good as this Vikings team. I should almost go through the PFF grades at the end of the season for every player on this team and then look at every other team and see which one has the best PFF grade team. That'd be an interesting article. No one steal that or do it. I don't want to do it. Most importantly, though, Rosenthal continues, they boast a singular amount of continuity on defense. That is huge. He essentially says that 8 of the 11 defensive starters have played at least 5 seasons under Zimmer. That means so much. They returned 10 of the 11 starters, with the 11th being a guy who was on the team over a season ago. When you have that familiarity, and Zimmer's system changes all the time. I know he doesn't really like being labeled as a AA gap blitz guy because that was a long time ago by football standards. But when you have guys that are that comfortable with one another, you can really look at doing things in practice. You don't need to run the same stuff because you've done it a million times. You still do it, but that's why they were able to do what they did against the Saints, to bring out that wrinkle that we never seen before, because they're so comfortable with their base defense that they have these things that are like, okay, in case we need this, let's practice it and put it on the shelf. And that's exactly what happened against the Saints. And I think that it's really exciting to think about. Again, if they were able to throw Breeze off of his game, you have a guy in Garoppolo who is prone in his weaknesses to throw turnovers. Now, he didn't have a ton of interceptions this season, but he's had struggles looking off coverages, getting past his first receiver in his progressions, essentially looking off the deep safety. And when you have a deep safety in Anthony Harris, that's exciting. Back to some of your comments. Nobody knows how Thielen got hurt. I mean, they play indoors. Could he have been cleated? I would assume so. I don't know how else you would get cut. If I find out, I'll let you guys know tomorrow. I'll ask some of my contacts in the media. Rocky says the 49ers are healthy and the Vikings are not. Yes, that's true, but they're not that unhealthy, really. I mean, Thielen has a cut. Diggs had the flu for 2 days. Cook, I'm a little worried about that. But he looked fine, or if not, he looked great. Curse has been tweeting that he wants to play. That's the entire injury report. I think if Curse plays, they win this game. I think they can win without him, but him against Kittle, I love that. I love it. We have to do it. We have to somehow. Does anyone out there have like I know it's a knee and a toe for Curse. So which one of you guys are willing to give up a toe or a knee? I'll give you a free shirt. Who plays corner? Rocky asks if Rhodes or Waynes gets hurt. Holton Hill, I would presume. Chris Boyd. Marcus Sherrills. I mean, I think they would go with Hill because he has what Zimmer wants, and the reason that they brought in Waynes outside of his speed and the fact that he gave up 2 touchdowns in his college career was his length. Height, but length. Zimmer always talks about length. Holton Hill has that length. Boyd doesn't. Sherrills obviously doesn't. He's got anti-length. But I would say Holton Hill. Paul Beasy says, Skull Vikings, bruh. Do I know you, Paul? Are you the Paul I think you are? Oh, Curse is out? They announced that? Okay. I didn't see that because my tire popped, so I had to get it towed and fixed. And Thielen is very questionable. It must be a pretty deep cut, but I can't imagine he wouldn't play. I just can't. And unless it like severed a tendon or something, I think if it's got to be a pain mitigation issue. I mean, that's a little disconcerting. Let's look it up in real time. I mean, I guess I just, I'm trying to stay positive here, but really, I mean, well, how the hell does that happen? Okay, well, it says Adam Thielen should play versus 49ers, NFL.com. Yeah, it seems like by all intents and purposes, he's going to play. NFL.com. Surprising he's questionable, though. I don't know. Maybe there's some subterfuge there. It's not like the 49ers wouldn't game plan for Thielen, but maybe they want them to focus on Diggs again and kind of write off Thielen, but he'll play. I thought Curse was doubtful and that yesterday was the last injury report, but there's leaks, obviously. Yeah, he's out. Son of a bitch. That's not good. I mean, it's not terrible, but we could have really used him. Sendejo, though, played well. He's physical. It just would have been nice to have that big body against Kittle. But, I mean, it's not going to be the end of the world if Kittle puts up 100 yards and anything else you shut down. You know what I mean? Tight ends aren't going to put up 250 on you. So I think that this defense still has a really good chance. I mean, it's going to come down to the same thing it does for the Vikings, which is who can run the ball better. And I think that the one the one team category, offense or defense, that the Vikings have a better season-long ranking in, it's against the run. The 49ers are 22nd against the run in terms of average yards allowed per attempt. And they don't have the talent that the Vikings do in regards to Dalvin Cook. Beyond that, I would take... So Kyle Shanahan's dad is essentially the Bill Walsh of the zone run, zone blocking situation, or the scheme. And so with Kubiak and Rick Dennison running the same system here, there's a ton of familiarity with it. So Zimmer can sit down, and I'm obviously did this week with Kubiak, and say, how do we best, and I'm sure they've done this throughout the season, obviously, but what would be the best way to stop what they do? And that knowledge, that's why you want a former head coach as an assistant on your team, especially a head coach like Kubiak, who's been in 7 Super Bowls as a coach. I think Zimmer's really going to have something dialed up special for stopping the run game. Then you're going to make them one-dimensional, and you're going to make it's going to come down to Garoppolo, Kittle, and those receivers. And those receivers just aren't on the level of... I mean, look what they did to Michael Thomas. Look what they did to Alvin Kamara. If they're going to start, trying to mitigate some of the run stuff by doing screens. I just think that this Vikings team matches up really, really well against the 49ers. If they can get a lead, especially, and stop the run game, they're going to become incredibly one-dimensional, and that's when you're going to get some turnovers. Beyond that, on offense... I know that they're healthy on defense, and that's a little scary, but I think that, I think if they don't get too cute and they get Cousins out of the pocket, which I have to assume they're going to do, you can mitigate that pass rush a little bit. And, they're really not good against the run. So just run. If they can pick up 4, 5, 6, look at what happened with the Seahawks against us when they were picking up 7, 8 yards on first down every single time. That's demoralizing. It's exhausting. It slows the game down enough for Cousins to get comfortable. But I have a lot of faith in this team winning this game. And that does scare me. I'm going to knock on wood again. I do that every episode. Rocky talks about they're getting back Quan Alexander. They're getting back D Ford. Paul Beasy says something very interesting, though. I feel like a lot of fans want us to use Curse, but I'm not sure how the coaching staff feels. They would use him. Perhaps sparingly. I'm a little surprised that they haven't extended him. I mean, I think I understand why. I mean, he had an amazing preseason. Maybe they were working on it, and then that DUI thing happened. I know he's been vocal about not being happy about that, but everybody loves Curse because of what he did in the preseason, and it's not hard to say, well, Kittle's great, and he's big, and Curse is big, and look what he did against Noah Fant on 4th and goal to end that game. But again, Sendejo is fine. Barr will be able to match up with him on a lot of plays. Kendricks as well. So it's not the end of the world that Curse isn't going to play. I felt, especially in the red zone, if you put a big body on him, like Curse, it would just really, really help. But it's not the end of the world. Paul says, we thought they would use him last week, not out there. In regards to Curse, he was injured still. He's turf toe and a knee injury. Rocky says Cousins is great out of the pocket and need to do more. They will. If they don't, then wow. I can't even put that thought into my mind. I think Zimmer learned from the Monday Night Football game. We saw it on the first play against the Saints. You just have to do it. At some point, again, you have to do what you do best, better than the other team is at stopping it. And it's no time to get cute. It's no time to, even some of those end arounds and triple reverses. Zimmer wants an old school football team. So what better to do than bring out heavy personnel, 2 tight ends, play action. If you want to get frisky, throw some screens. That's about as exciting as this offense needs to get. Pick your shots. Lethal down the field. Yeah, you guys still seeing this? I just got a phone call. It might be that my car is ready to get picked up, so I'm actually going to leave you guys wanting more. I will be back tomorrow early to do a pregame thing. Let's hang out tomorrow around 2? Maybe 1:30. You'll see that. Let's just say 2. I'll be back tomorrow at 2. We'll talk for a good, I don't know, let's do 1:30, because then we can talk for like an hour. I'll try to get some special guests on as well. Woo! But yeah, I'll leave you guys with that. Thank you for tuning in. And, Earl Smith Sr. just liked this. Hey, sir, thanks for all the support. I was just talking about how the team needs to use your son more tomorrow. So, if you want to pass that along. Some guy in a sweatpants just stop the presses, Mr. Zimmer. Mr. Stefanski, throw out your game plan. Look at this. Ha. But thanks to everyone for tuning in, and sorry that the show got interrupted by a phone call, but I'll see you all tomorrow.